Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swamini Namine. Namaste Saraswate Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pashyatadeshatarine. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhakta-vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So we are on the 4th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, titled as Transcendental Knowledge. So far in Bhagavad Gita, who am I? That has been addressed. How I realize myself, that has been addressed. But who is the Supreme Personality of Godhead? Or to say, who is the speaker of Bhagavad Gita? That has not been introduced so far. So far only two things have been discussed. Who am I and how do I do self-realization? 4th chapter for the first time will introduce the speaker. And the speaker will himself introduce who is Krishna. So to begin with, let's give you a quick acronym for this chapter. How many of you have a copy of Bhagavad Gita with you here? Alright. You brought the copy of Bhagavad Gita here? No, you should come here. You have come for Bhagavad Gita class, right? Okay, good. Thank you. We should have, so that you at least become familiar with this. Fine. So acronym for the 4th chapter is PAST. For those of you who have been coming around, you're aware that for every chapter we give an acronym so that you kind of remember what is the subject matter of that particular chapter, and just to help you memorize of it. So let's begin with first part of this chapter, where P stands for position of Krishna, from verses 1 to verses 10. In this section, Lord Shri Krishna largely discusses the origin of Bhagavad Gita. How did Bhagavad Gita came into existence? So here in this section, Lord Shri Krishna explains how he originally established the transcendental or spiritual educational system, and how a knowledge is how a knowledge is received through this spiritual educational system or institution. So Krishna is the teacher, original teacher, who instructed on the science of spirituality, and how this knowledge comes down up to today is through an institution called as Parampara institution. Parampara institution refers to a relationship of a teacher and a qualified student. Among the pupils or the students, a teacher identifies the qualified student and gives him the baton, just like in a relay race, passes on the baton. Now you carry it forward. And that student becomes a teacher for the next generation, and he identifies the qualified student and hands over the baton to him to pass it on to the next generation. Like this, generation across generation, millenniums across millennium, this system of spiritual education has come down the line so far. So in this regard, Lord Shri Krishna says how it all started. Chapter number 4, verse number 1, Krishna says, repeat after me. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Imam vivasvate yogam proktavan namam aham avyayam vivasvan manave praha manoriksvakave apravit. We have discussed about this, Sri Bhagavan Uvacha, before also. Whenever it is spoken by Arjuna, it is Arjuna Vacha, Dhritarashtra Vacha, Sanjaya Vacha. When Krishna speaks, Sanjaya Vyasadeva writes, Sri Bhagavan Vacha. We have discussed this in the second chapter. I'll move forward. Imam Vivasvate Yogam. Bhagavad Gita is also called as Yoga Shastra. Imam in Sanskrit means this. Vivasvate Yogam. Yoga means the science of yoga. This science of yoga, Vivasvate, which means Vivaswan, sun god. The name of sun god is Vivaswan. Proktavan aham avvayan. Proktavan matlab kaha gaya. By whom? I, Krishna, standing before you, Arjuna, gave this knowledge of yoga to sun god Vivaswan. What is the nature of this knowledge? Avvayam. Avvaya means imperishable, can never get destroyed, forever, eternal educational system. Then Vivaswan Manave Praha. Vivaswan gave this knowledge, or passed on to this knowledge to Manave, to Manu, Ikshvaku Manu. Ikshvaku Manu is the lineage under which Lord Ram appeared. Ikshvaku Vanshaj, the solar dynasty. That's what he called solar dynasty, right? Vivaswan spoke to his son Ikshvaku, and Ikshvaku, from Ikshvaku comes the solar dynasty in which Lord Ram appeared. Vivaswan manave praha, manur Ikshvakave bravit. And like this, Vivaswan spoke to Manu, Manu spoke to Ikshvaku, and like this, the system of knowledge has appeared. Mahabharata gives a very interesting verse. Treta yugadau chatato vivaswan manave dadau. It talks about exactly when Ikshvaku received this knowledge and brought it to this planet Earth. Now, sun god is Vivaswan. He's on the sun planet. So, how did the knowledge from the sun planet came to planet Earth? Is what has been described here. Manushaloka brati artham suta ikshvakave dadau. Ikshvakuna cha katito vyapya lokan avasthitaha. Translation. In the beginning of the millennium known as Treta Yuga, the science of the relationship with the Supreme, that is yoga. Yoga means relationship, the science of the relationship with the Lord, was delivered by sun god Vivaswan to Manu. Manu being the father of mankind, from Manu comes the word man. The English word man comes from the word Manu. Manu being the father of mankind gave it to his son Maharaj Ikshvaku, the king of this earth planet, and who also happens to be the forefather of Raghu Vamsha, in which Lord Ramachandra appeared. Therefore, Bhagavad Gita existed in human society from the time of Maharaj Ikshvaku. So, how old is this knowledge? Not 5,000 years ago. This is Kali Yuga, 5,000 years have passed. Dwapar Yuga, 8 lakh years. And your Treta Yuga, which means 12 lakh years. Which means this knowledge first appeared at the beginning of the Treta Yuga. So Treta Yuga's duration is 12 lakh years. Dwapar Yuga duration is 8 lakh years. 12 plus 8 approximately is 20 lakh years. Add 5,000 plus. So 20 lakh years ago, this knowledge descended from the sun planet through Vivaswan, through Manu to Ikshvaku on this planet. And Krishna, standing on the chariot to Arjuna 5,000 years ago, tells Arjuna, I gave this knowledge to sun god. How many years ago? 20 lakh years ago. What question will come to your mind? If Krishna has to say like this to you, I, my dear friend, what am I speaking to you? The science of yoga. I gave this knowledge to sun god. How long ago? 20 lakh years ago. Does any question comes to your mind? Because that question came in the mind of Arjuna also. You think of it, if in case you're able to figure out the question, raise your hand, I'll take your question. So when was Bhagavad Gita spoken? I kind of just gave you the duration of it. And the Gita is not there for us a speculative treatise for the insignificant mundane scholar. जब जब बारिश तेज हो स्पीकर की वॉल्यूम बढ़ा देना just to match it up with the noise. But it is a standard book of knowledge coming down from time immemorial. Like this is the subject matter. And the beauty of Bhagavad Gita, unlike all other Vedic scriptures, Rigveda, Sam, Yajur, Atharva, Puranas, Itihasas, Vedanta Sutras, and everything else, Bhagavad Gita is directly spoken by Bhagavan. Therefore, Vyasadeva, whenever it is addressed by Krishna, would always say, Shri Bhagavan Uvacha. It's very interesting. He also uses the word Shri. He never says Shri Arjuna Vacha. He never says Shri Sanjay Vacha. Shri means what? Lakshmi. Lakshmi Narayan. So that's a point over here. Hare Krishna. इंद्रदेव ये सुन के खुश हो गया लगता है बड़ी प्रसन्नता से बारिश कर रहे हैं. So any question comes to your mind, if Krishna is standing on the chariot with you, and Krishna was 89 years old when he spoke Bhagavad Gita, and so was Arjuna. How many years old? 89 years old. And Krishna, Arjuna are the same age. And Krishna says, I gave this knowledge 20 lakh years ago. So what question will come into your mind? Yes, Madhavana. They would need a mic.
The question which might come to Arjuna's mind is, who are you?
Okay, who are you? Great. Yes, next. Behind.
The question will be like, you are living on this earth since 89 years. So how can you claim that you have given this knowledge 20 lakhs?
Absolutely. Krishna, you're just like me. You're born the same time I was born. In the sense, same year I was born. And you spoke this knowledge 20 lakh years ago. How do I believe you that you gave this knowledge 20 lakh years ago? Valid question? So that would be the next subject matter, which Krishna will tell Arjuna, how I am the same person who existed 20 lakh years ago, who exists today, who existed even before 20 lakh years ago, who exists today, and who exists forever in the same self-made body. We'll come to that subject matter. Let's take a look at it. What's the process of receiving the knowledge of Bhagavad Gita? That was verse number 1. Then verse number 2 and 3, Krishna talks about how this knowledge is received. Evam parampara praptam. Second verse. I don't have it here. Evam parampara praptam. Imam rajarishayo viduhu. Krishna says, Evam is this. Parampara praptam. Praptam. You can get this knowledge through the institution of parampara. Imam rajarishayo viduhu. And what is the qualification of the student? Must be Raj Rishi. Imam Raj Rishayo Vidu, not an ordinary man. So just like an IIT, not every student get admitted. There's a particular cream of society get admitted, right? For every college has their own admission criteria. So Krishna tells, what is admission criteria? You must be Raj Rishi. Raj Rishi is a saint, a saintly person who is taking a role of a king. You must be a saintly person. Imam Raj Rishya Viduhu Sakala Neha Mahato Yog Nashta Parantapah. Sakala Neha Mahato, under the influence of the great mighty Kala, time. Remember how many of you seen 1990s, 95 Mahabharat serial? The moment Mahabharat serial will come, the Kal Chakra will come. Yada yada hi dharmasya glane bhavati bharata abhyutanam adharmasya tadatmanam sajamiham paritranaya sadhunam vinashaya dushkritam dharma samsapanarthaya sambhavami Yuge. Remember now? I'm refreshing your memory. You might have seen this. So what was I saying about? So Imam Raj Rishi Sakala Neha Mahata Yogo Nashta Parantapa. Hey Arjuna, under the influence of the great mighty time, this knowledge of yoga, which means relationship of all with the Lord, was lost. Yoga Nashta Parantapa. Parantapa means a conqueror of enemies. Yoga Nasht. This science of yoga or knowledge of the Lord was lost. Then Arjuna wonders, all right, why are you telling me all this? And then Krishna speaks the third verse. Bhakto sime sakha cheti saha rahasyam etad uttamam. Arjuna, because you are my bhakta, you are my sakha, therefore I am sharing this confidential knowledge with you again, so that the system of yoga can be re-established. So it was first came onto this earth 20 lakh years ago, and it appears when Krishna appeared on this world 5,000 years ago, sometime that time, maybe before, the knowledge was lost. What does it mean, yoga nashta parantapa? Now, the concept that Krishna speaks in Bhagavad Gita, it is not something that Arjuna was not educated into it. It wasn't that people in those days had forgotten Bhagavad Gita. Everyone knew Bhagavad Gita. So then why did Krishna said yoga nashta parantapa? The science of yoga has been lost. Now those days we didn't need a computer hard disk or digital copy or a cloud technology to protect our data. People had the sharpest of the minds. They could remember everything. Everything. Almost everyone. Just like, to give you an example, Arjuna, although a Kshatriya, for him, he had to, let's say, call upon the celestial weapons. It is not that he will lift a celestial weapon, put it onto his bow and shoot it. Celestial weapons were invoked by the art of chanting. There were mantras through the power of which celestial weapons would appear directly on the bow and Arjuna would shoot. And in those days, your power of the chant, the quality of in those days, the chanting of mantras, if it didn't had a quality and right pronunciation, the mantra would be ineffective. In other words, imagine you are in such a stressful situation where there is a constant firing of weapon happening from all around, and there you have to chant a mantra to invoke a weapon. I mean, it requires some amount of stability here, yes or no? And to be able to do it. And I have heard certain mantras had to be chanted 108 times. Certain mantras had to be chanted 100 times. Although what potential these individuals would have to be able to do on the battlefield like this. So Krishna says, well, so Yoga Nashta Parantapa, what does Yoga Nashta Parantapa means? The idea is, the Bhagavad Gita was there as it is, however, its meaning was lost. People had construed or speculated different understanding than it was originally meant. Just like today, prior to Srila Prabhupada's commentary published in English, many people in this land, great land of Bharata, had read Lokmanya Tilak's commentary. Some had read Radha Krishna's commentary. And any spiritual organization you see of today and of the past, every spiritual mentor have written some commentary on Bhagavad Gita. All of them giving all their interpretations. Let's go back 5,000 years ago. I'll come back today in a short while. So Krishna said, I am re-establishing. Who knows the real purport and import better than the author himself? Yes or no? When Krishna is saying Yoga Nashta Parantrapa, which means the people at that point of time have lost the true import and the meaning of Bhagavad Gita. And therefore Krishna says, I have come here to re-establish the right meaning and the import of Bhagavad Gita. At times Krishna appears by himself, at times Krishna sends his beloved students to set the import correct. Fast forward to 5,000 years ago, prior to Srila Prabhupada traveling to the West and teaching people the right meaning of Bhagavad Gita, even Indians had forgotten about Bhagavad Gita. And Indians of today have also forgotten about Bhagavad Gita. How many? Almost every one of us, if not everyone, most of us would have had a copy of Bhagavad Gita at our home and largely on the altar. But none of us would have ever read it. You're fortunate if you never read it. Because if you read it, you probably lost the import. Because whose commentary you read, what you read, then your mind becomes stuck to the wrong interpretation. And look at Srila Prabhupada at the advanced age of 70 years. He travels all over the world in the great difficulty back in 70s, more than 13 times. And he establishes Krishna conscious movement all over the world. Now you may say, what is Krishna conscious movement? The Bhagavad Gita begins with Dhritarashtra Vacha, Dharma Kshetre, Kurukshetre. It starts with Dharma Kshetre. And the same Bhagavad Gita concludes with Sarva Dharman Parityajya. Mam. Ma means me. Krishna is speaking, which means him. Ekam Sharanam Vraja. Aham Tvam. Aham means I. Tvam means you. Sarva Papebhyo. Whatever past sinful actions you have done, Moksha Shami Ma Suchaha. Moksha Shami, I will liberate you. Ma means I. Suchaha, do not worry. Is that a complicated Sanskrit? It's a straightforward Sanskrit. So what does Krishna, what does Bhagavad Gita concludes with? Surrender. Take shelter of Krishna. And how to surrender? Manmana Bhava Mad Bhakto Madhyaji Mam Namaskar. Krishna telling Arjuna, become my devotee, offer respect to me. Try to serve me, love me. And look what did a 70-year-old man traveling all over the world did. He infused the heart of as such lost, forgotten individual of this world with Krishna Bhakti. And all over the world, over a period of time, came out or manifested or sprouted the centers of Krishna consciousness, where anyone and everyone can just go and learn about the art how to love the Lord, or how to actually follow the teaching of Bhagavad Gita, that is Sarva Dharman Parityaja. Now that's the purpose which Krishna is trying to speak to Arjuna about this knowledge. And I just told you why and what does it mean this knowledge was lost like this. So who can receive this knowledge? Krishna's friend devotee. So as such, I already made a point about it. If you look around, there are hundreds and hundreds of commentaries. It is said more than 600 commentaries of Bhagavad Gita are available in the market. But hardly anyone brought about a change in individual. Okay, even if you don't understand the import of Bhagavad Gita, from Dharma Kshetra Kurukshetra to Sarva Dharma Parityaja, at least Arjuna's life got transformed. Yes or no? If you at least do not understand the real import, those who read Bhagavad Gita, at least the life should change. How many of you have seen people reading Bhagavad Gita, their lives have changed outside of ISKCON domain? Outside of ISKCON domain, how many people you saw have had a copy of Bhagavad Gita, their life changed? Maybe they just read it ritually. Why? The same thing. Message had always been there. However, because the original message was not presented, certain interpretations was presented. Therefore, it just never made a difference in the life. Look at it. By the way, this is Turkey, all right? These are the photos from the Turkey. However, if the original message of Bhagavad Gita is presented, as Srila Prabhupada did it, it has the potential, and it did it, to bring about the worldwide revolution in the consciousness of humanity. This is Turkey, this is Japan. These are also photos of Turkey only. This will eradicate all the ills from the society, where hatredness would be replaced by love, selfishness would be replaced by compassion, arrogance by humility. Such transformation is imminent. It has to happen. And why it has to happen? Because it is said, Vasudeva Kutumbakam. We are one family. All of us have heard of it. Just right at the corner here, persistent. It says big bold letters, Vasudeva Kutumbakam. This whole world is my big family. I guess symbiosis also say the same thing. Vasudeva Kutumbakam. Because we are one family. We're supposed to love each other. But for some misgivings and for some misunderstanding, temporary reasons, we have developed hatred for each other. There are so many artificial distinctions on the basis of race, color, caste, creed, which just pertains to the body. And the body is the first thing that you give up when what is called as death. But yet we are so attached to it. However, this all changed when Srila Prabhupada, at the advanced age, took this message of Bhagavad Gita travel around, and it brought about this change in the lives of everyone. So what does this spiritual knowledge means? What is the essence of Bhagavad Gita? Three things, because this chapter is titled Transcendental Knowledge. Spiritual knowledge more or less is about three things. First, this is also called a Sambandha Gyan. Who am I? Knowledge about the self. Second, knowledge about the Supreme Lord and His opulences. And third, about the knowledge of one's relationship with the absolute truth. So, in verses 5 to 10, now Krishna will begin to speak about Himself. And He's going to address the question which gentleman here brought out. Arjuna would have thought, Krishna, I am 89 years old, you are 89 years old. How did you give this message 20 lakh years ago? Even if, obviously, that must be your past life. If you remember everything about your past life, how come I don't remember anything about my past life? What is so special about you? Please tell me. And now Krishna began to speak about who am I? Who is Krishna? In other words, to Arjuna. Let's take a look at it. So, Lord first of all tells the difference between the Supreme Personality of Godhead and the Jiva. And Krishna says, Arjuna, although I appeared as a son of Devahuti, I am not forced to take birth because of my karma. Whereas all of you, karmana daiva netrena jantur deha utpatte. Every living entity born in this world is born under the influence of karmic reactions, karma, and under the supervision of Daiva. However, myself, Atma Mayaya, I am self-manifested. I choose where to appear and when to appear. And my body never changes like yours. Satchit Ananda. That is how Brahmaji addresses Krishna. Ishvaraha Parama Krishna Satchidananda Vigraha Anadir Adir Govinda Sarvakarana Karana. And that's what Brahmaji spoke to Krishna. Satchit Ananda Vigraha. Sat means eternity, Chit means knowledge, Ananda means bliss. Whereas for you, living entities, the spirit souls keeps on acquiring new set of bodies after bodies. And the moment you acquire a new set of body, you forget everything of the past. Anyone remembers anything of the past life? So see, Bhagavad Gita is scientific. Let's take a look at a comparison between the Lord and the Jivatmas. Krishna is known as Achyuta. Achyuta means infallible, which means eternal and one who remembers everything. Whereas in the case of living entities, yes, living entity is eternal. Na jayate mriyate va kadachin nayam bhutva bhavitva na bhuya ajo nitya shashvato yam purano ajaha nitya shashvat. You're also eternal, but you forget about the past life. So we are not Achyuta. Krishna is addressed as Achyuta, infallible. Difference between us and living entity, or difference in Krishna and us. Krishna appears by his own will, Atma Maya, when he desires. But we are forced to appear by karma. Karmana daiva naitrena. Yes or no? Any one of you chose the time, the hospital, the parents, or you just crash landed? How many of you had a crash landing? Raise your hand. Because crash landing, the symptom of crash landing is all of us came out crying. If it was happy landing, then you must have been smiling, isn't it? Now, how did Krishna appear? When Krishna appeared, he appeared in a four-handed form, fully decorated with the armless, breastless, helmet, fully decorated, with clothes, with the long curly hairs, Kaustubha money, everything was there. And Devki got frightened. Prabhu, जन्मे हो थोड़ा श्रृंगार का मौका माँ को भी दे दो सब श्रृंगार के संग पैदा हुए तो मैं क्या श्रृंगार करूंगी and she requested my dear Lord please take a form of a child you have appeared and Krishna is not the four-handed Vishnu is Vishnu is like a small baby in the four-handed form and none of us appeared with a dressed probably हम सब नंगे पैदा हुए थे right so forced to appear by karma appears in a spiritual body. Krishna is 89 years old, standing on the battlefield, yet he was same as he was when he was 16 years old. If you look at the photo of Bhagavad Gita, Krishna, does he ever look like a 90-year-old man? If you have seen him, 16-year-old, that's what he is always. Appears in, whereas us, we are in this material body which is temporary, which is full of ignorance and misery. Let me ask this thing. Asat means temporary. Is it temporary? Yes or no? Asat, Achit, is it full of ignorance? Yes or no? Is it full of misery? Yes or no? तुम ही yes कह रहे हो बाकी का क्या है बाकी का सुनने दो तो इतना loud yes बोल रहे हो मुझे लगा सब बोल रहे हैं okay is it full of misery yes or no how many of you have had experience if a tiny part of your body gets pricked by a thorn a tiny fragment of your body you cannot focus on anything else even this tiniest finger has all the potential to make your life horrible yes or no if it begins to pain so that's the point it's full of misery. Now in case of Krishna, no difference in the body and the self, therefore it is called Advaita. Whereas we have the gross body and we have subtle body of mind, intelligence and false again. Krishna remembers all his birth, is called Avvayam, imperishable, whereas in the case of living entity, they forget about their bodily changes. How many of you have a crystal clear memory of your childhood? Forget about past life. Anyone here? Oh, let me ask this question. How many of you do not have a crystal clear memory of your childhood? Raise your hands. यार इस जन्म का याद नहीं है पिछले जन्म की बात करते हैं है ना अरे पिछला जन्म छोड़ो How many of you remember what did you eat last Friday? Not this Friday. Last Friday afternoon. All right, one person. Maybe she went out on a party or something. I'm just joking. Or maybe the next day person went to a doctor and the Ayurvedic doctor chastised, hey, बहुत कोफ्ता खाया तुमने कल रात. I'm just joking, don't mind. All right. So, this is what Krishna says in verse number 5 and 6 about who am I and about a living entity. We're getting applauded by Indra. Okay. Now, in verses 6 and verses 7, now Krishna talks about his reasons for appearing in this world. I've already quoted the verse, Yada Yada Hi Dharmasya. I'll just summarize it. So Krishna says, whenever there is a decline in religion, whenever there is a rise in irreligion, why? To annihilate the demons, to protect the devotees, and to re-establish Dharma Samsa Panarthaya. That's the reason Krishna appears. And when does he appear? Sambhavami Yuge Yuge. He appears again and again and again, and he continues to appear till the time we do not transform like that. And then 6th and 7th and 8th Krishna talks about. So what had happened from verses 5 to verses 8? Krishna has spoken about who am I? I'm different than the living entities. And now he has given his reasons of appearance in this world. Now in the 9th verse Krishna says, one who knows the truth about me, what will be the result of it? What will you gain knowing the truth, what I have just spoken? And Krishna says, Janma karma chame divyam evam yoveti tatvataha tyaktva deham punarjanma naiti mameti. So Arjuna, one who knows about my janma and karma, birth, activities, janma karma cha me divyam, which are transcendental, spiritual, divyam. Janma karma cha me divyam evam yo veti tatvataha. Tatvata means to know in truth. One who knows the truth about me, tyaktva deham punarjanma. When he gives up his body, tyaktva, deha, gives up his body, punarjanma, naiti swarjuna. Such an individual does not take birth again in this world. The question arises, if you don't take birth here, where do you go? That Krishna will tell ahead. However, what Krishna implies, that there are two worlds, anti-material and the material world. 1954 Nobel Prize. Two physicists had got a Nobel Prize for finding out anti-material world. Where in their research they found out, just like this world is made up of matter, protons, neutrons, electrons, there is a world which is inverse to this reality, where there is no matter. And they called it as anti-material world. How many of you know about the experiment which is going on in this is Switzerland, if I'm correct, right? They've created this big 30-kilometer of that. What is it called as? I'm missing the name. Anyone remembers? Any tech geek here? Hadron Collider. That is a place where they produce antiproton. 1 milligram of antiproton is more than $1 billion. 1 milligram of antiproton is equivalent to $1 billion. And there is a whole thing about it. You can go and look at that Hadron Collider, right? Yeah, that's the thing. Or 30 kilometers of radius it is spread. So anyways, so Krishna says here in Bhagavad Gita, long ago, there are two worlds. One is material and the spiritual. When you die, knowing the truth about me, who belongs to the anti-material world, spiritual world, you also come back to the anti-material or the spiritual world, where the life is full of Sat, Chit, Ananda. How many of us, it's needless to ask, but if I'm correct, you raise your hand to say yes or no. Nobody in this world wants to die, yes or no? Unless you're really suffering. That's an exception. But nobody wants to die, yes or no? Everyone wants to have some knowledge. They want to know what's happening in the world. Yes or no? Yes. Say loudly. Yes. And everyone, whatever you're doing, has only one goal, to become happy. Yes or no? Yes. Sorry to say, you ain't going to find any of it here. That's a fact. But you're looking for it. And that's where Krishna says, in spiritual world you find all the three things. Sat, life is eternal. Chit, full of knowledge. Ananda, everything is blissful. Here, the scientists will keep on promising generation after generation, will make your generation ahead, live longer. It hasn't happened. How many of you agree our life expectancy rate have increased or reduced? How many of you say increased? Increased. We are living longer. अरे यार कृष्णा 125 साल जिए थे कम से कम. इतना नहीं तो उतना तो सोचो. ठीक है. How many of you say our life expectancy have reduced drastically? That's a fact. And scientists are giving you empty promise that will make you live longer. How is it? It's contradictory. It's not happening otherwise. Anyways, that's the thing. So Krishna is saying about it here. And result of transcendental knowledge in the 10th verse, Vitaraga Bhaya Krodha, Krishna says, one who understands the nature about me, about who am I, such a person becomes purified, freed from attachment, fear and anger, attains love for Krishna, etc. And finally go back to Krishna, spiritual world. And this concludes our first part of the 4th chapter, Position of Krishna, where Lord Shri Krishna talks about how he established the eternal educational system, wherein the knowledge is awarded through the parampara system. And who are the people who educate? They are the Raj Rishis, the qualified saintly individuals. They present the idea, the teachings that I have imparted originally in the most interesting an adventurous way and a practical way. And at times, when I see there is no one to establish it, no one to teach, Krishna says, I appear myself. Sambhavami yoga. Yogi. So Krishna appears himself again and again to ignite spirituality, to destroy material influences, and to show us the path back home, back to Godhead. If you look at it from this perspective, this material world is nothing. This place where we live in is nothing but a spiritual university where we are here to go through this education, eternal education system established by Krishna. And the objective of this university is to graduate. And what is the exam? Antakale chamameva smaran muktva kalevaram. Death is the exam. It is about at the time of death, everything will be decided. You succeed, you quit. You fail, keep moving in this vicious cycle of 8.4 million species. Take another birth, forget about your past, again struggle for life and existence. That's how the life goes on. Moving forward, now, the second part of transcendental knowledge. There are three parts of transcendental knowledge. Who am I has been addressed. Second part, who is Krishna, has been addressed. And the third part about our relationship with Krishna has not been addressed. That will be taken later on. Now the second part. If we have understood Krishna as a Supreme Personality of Godhead, as has been explained, what is the application of this transcendental knowledge? How does this transcendental knowledge help? Krishna says, knowledge removes all kind of misconception. In fact, there are three fundamental misconceptions which have been addressed here. Even the pious, those who had been worshippers, theistic people, even at times, even they do not know the answers to this. Because often our worship, our faith is based on sentiments, not on knowledge. How many of you agree with this? Our worship, our piety, our visiting to temple is more of a function of a sentiments than knowledge. At least for Hindus, this is true 200%. Yes or no? Because we haven't studied Bhagavad Gita or books like this. So the three major misconceptions. First, all paths lead to the same destination. We can do anything. We can do any path of yoga. We can worship anyone. We go back. No, that's not the case. All demigods are different from the Lord. In one particular spiritual organization in their ashram or the temple was a pretty interesting temple. It had almost all the devatas which you knew, and probably you discovered some new over there, which you haven't come across your life. Among all the altars, then there was one altar which was the biggest altar, and there was a mirror, big mirror, and below that mirror there was a heading: "You are the real God." You understood? Mirror mein who do you see? The person when goes in front of the mirror, हर deity के नीचे नाम लिखा रहता है ना, लक्ष्मी नारायण, सीता नारायण, पार्वती, शिव, etc., etc. And here, the biggest altar, there was a mirror, and नीचे लिखा हुआ था, "You are the real God." So the idea of society is you can worship this, you can worship that, you get the same result, or else everyone is God. Well, that will be taken care here. And the caste system, unfair and exploitative. We'll address it briefly that. Let's begin with the first misconception. All paths lead to same destination. Imagine you're traveling by a train from Pune to Bombay. If you happen to get into a wrong train, which is apparently going from Pune to Bangalore, would you reach Bombay or Bangalore? It's just a common sense, simple thing. To say that I can do anything would get the result, it just does not work. Krishna says, no, it doesn't work like this. Ye yathamam prapadante tam sathaiva bhajamyam. As you surrender, I reveal accordingly. Which means, Lord reciprocates to individuals according to their capacities and desires. Somebody wants their material desires to be fulfilled, they get their material desire fulfilled. They are called as karmis. Somebody wants to get merged into Brahman, they are called as Brahmavadis. So they go to that destination. Somebody wants siddhis, yogis wanting siddhi, So they get siddhis, whereas those who want to become devotees of the Lord, they develop affection for the Lord. Not that everyone gets the same thing. What you hanker, what you desire, accordingly, Krishna says, I reciprocate. Second misconception, all demigods are different forms of the Lord. No, that is not correct. This subject matter will be addressed at length in the 7th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. We'll take it that time. However, let us briefly talk about Devatas. Okay, it's not another slide. Let me just address over here. As far as all the Devatas are considered or concerned, they are also living entities invested with superior powers than you and I, which means they have the power to manipulate certain part of this nature. To give you an example, most of you, some of you would be working in a company. There is a difference between you and your manager. There's a difference between your manager and the chief executive officers. Yes or no? And the difference is that each position is invested with distinctive powers. CEO, the decision making ability the CEO has, that doesn't goes to the manager. And what decision making ability manager has, it does not belong to you. Yes or no? So different positions are invested with different powers. Similarly, all these devatas that we know of, Indra, Surya. Now, by the way, Surya is not the name. Name is Vivaswan. Indra, Surya, Chandra, Varuna, these all are positions. Yamaraj, Yama, these all are positions as much as Chief Minister, Prime Minister, Finance Minister, Home Minister, Education Minister. These are not the names of the individuals. So who acquire these positions? Different living entities depending on the level of their piety. Who selects them? The Supreme individual. He appoints each of this. That's what the subject matter. We'll take it look more in detail in the 7th chapter like this. Coming to the third misconception about the caste system, which means technically there were 4 castes technically. You can call them Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya and Shudra. Over a period of time, in present day and time, this got further divided into many branches. And yes, it's a noted fact, there had been an exploitation by the superior caste of the inferior caste. This is without a doubt. But because there had been an exploitation, it does not mean the system itself is bad. To give you an example, let's say you're living in a society, and in that society somebody ends up in a divorce. Now would you say the marriage institution is bad? Yes or no? The problem is with that couple who could not sustain their relationship. Because it didn't work for somebody, it does not mean it's not going to work for everyone. Similarly, it was the responsibility of the king to ensure this caste system is properly established and followed. But what you do if the king themselves become corrupted? And that had been the history of the present day and time. Go back 1,000 years ago, and that had happened organically. Because of which the whole system became a system of exploitation. Well, that's today's situation. But what is the system about? This Varnashrama Dharma, where the whole society was divided into 2 parts. The social order and the spiritual order. Social order, Brahmana have a certain occupation, that's social order. Kshatriya have a certain occupation. Vaishyas have certain occupation. Shudras have certain occupation. This is social order. Then you have a spiritual order, which means ashram. Brahmachari ashram, Grahastha ashram, Vanaprastha ashram and Sannyas ashram. Now, this is spiritual side and this is the social side. If you remember the 2nd chapter, when Krishna said, "You're not the body but spiritual," I raised the question, if today I get to know I'm not the body but the spiritual, how does my tomorrow look different than today? Anyone remembers this? And I said, how does tomorrow look different than today? Which means, until today I thought I have only one responsibility, just to maintain my body. Now, because I know I'm not only the body but spiritual, which means I have two responsibilities. One towards the body, one towards the soul. The one towards the body is called as social order. One towards the soul is called as spiritual order. Can you see how scientific the system was? If you're part of the system, automatically you get to take care both of your body and both of the spirit, isn't it? Now today we only have a part of the social order. Spiritual order does not exist or is very limited today. That's the first point about it. Second thing about the science behind it. How do you get into a social order and a spiritual order? You being a Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra was not dependent on your birthright. Not that because you're born in a family of doctor, you have to be a doctor. Similarly, if you're born in a Brahmana, not necessarily you have the qualifications of the Brahmana. So according to your psychophysical nature, your social order was decided. For example, Vishwamitra Muni was born in a Kshatriya family, ended up to be a Brahmana. Parshuram was born in a Brahmana family, ended up acting like a Kshatriya. It's your psychophysical nature which determines what you are. Therefore, the function of Gurukul, our education system, was where the Guru will observe the psychophysical nature, psyche of an individual, and then would impart training in that psyche to help him grow. Can you imagine a society where you get to do a profession which is for your liking? Just imagine a society where you get to do a profession of your liking. How many of you say, I will be very much happy if I get to do what I like to do? Please raise your hand. The inspiration for work will not be money. The inspiration for work is, I like it. You will be self-inspired. And when you are self-inspired, when money is not the factor, then exploitation automatically would not happen. When money becomes a factor, then exploitation just becomes a vicious cycle. You exploit more and more so that you can draw more money, thinking that money will make you happy. Eventually you never become happy, you exploit more. And that's how the exploitation goes on. Similarly is a spiritual order. If your inclination and understanding about life is that I understand I'm not the body but spiritual, take sannyas. And somebody feels, no, I'm not ready, all right, get married. Go through the system. And we've, what do you say called? Stridan, right? Stridan we call it. Kanyadan. This is one of the samskara. Can you imagine? Marriage institution is a samskara. Marriage institution is a yajna. And for a parent to give their daughter in this sacrifice in Vivaha Yajna it is called in Sanskrit. That is called as Dan, Kanya Dan. Can you imagine how sacred this whole system was? Marriage was considered sacrifice, and giving one's daughter was considered as charity, dan to it. That's how the whole system was. Now come back to today's society. How our society is divided today. There are only two factors which divides the society. First, social status. You identified according to your social status, yes or no? Everyone is competing in the world today to improve their social status. If you find a friend or anyone of yours having a bigger smartphone, bigger car, you become extremely disturbed, yes or no? Yes. Which means you're living in a society where you can never be happy because you're competing on a social status level. There is always a competition in today's society. All right, that is one way of division. What is the second way of division of the society? Is faith. What religion I belong to. And religion today, unfortunately, have only become a subject matter of faith. And what is the result of all this? Exploitation, terrorism, all kind of ills in the society have been born because of having a society divided on social status or faith. There is nothing scientific here. There is nothing which is for us. We are exploiting and we are only getting exploited. Don't trust me? Go and look at your faces. Despite going through all the education, I believe all of you have a job here. Looking at you, none of you look happy about it. You look so beaten up and beaten down. And probably wondering, मैं क्या कर रहा हूँ जीवन में? मुझे सपना दिया गया था, भविष्य में बड़ा होऊंगा, कॉलेज की डिग्री मिलेगी, जॉब मिलेगी, सारे अरमान पूरे होंगे, अरमान पानी पानी हो गए, पानी पानी हो गए, कुछ और नहीं हुआ. All right, all right, all right. That's the subject matter over here. Let's move forward. So knowledge removes all misconceptions. Do all paths lead to the same destination? Yes or no? Are all demigods different forms of the Lord? I have not spoken much on it. I'll speak later on. But at least we saw that no, they're not. They're also Jivatma. Is the caste system unfair and exploitative? It actually made exploitative by the people, by the ruling class, by their wrong administration. But the system itself is not wrong. Moving to the next subject matter. Are you doing okay? Bhagavad Gita is becoming a little heavy now. Should I continue? Yes. All right, take it. Now, this is the most intricate subject matter. Intricate means complicated. I don't say that. Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita himself. Arjuna, what I'm about to tell you is one of the most difficult subject matter of Bhagavad Gita. This is called as karmic bank balance. So the spiritual knowledge or transcendental knowledge not only removes all misconceptions, which we already saw, it also nullifies our karmic bank balance. एक ही बाण से दो दुश्मन खत्म. One, misconceptions gone. Second, our karmic bank balance becomes nil. How does it happen? So, in summary, there are three kinds of action. Let me just briefly tell you what karma is. Karma refers to action. Karma also refers to reaction. Karmic reaction. Karma means what you do. And whatever you do, for that, nature gives a reaction. Simple example. If you are at a traffic signal and the signal is red, what is an expected action from us? Stop. And if in case you jump the signal, what is an expected response from the traffic police? Is a ticket? Agreed? Every action produces a reaction. If you do the right action, which means if you stop at a signal, you do not get a reaction. But if you do a wrong action of jumping the signal, then what you get? A fine as a slap. So that is how the local administration functions. Do you think the universal administration doesn't function? Similarly, universal administration holds us accountable for everything you say and everything you do. Regardless of what you do or what you say, may be considered lawful or unlawful according to the laws of this world, but the laws of the universe dominate. Ultimately, we get in our life not according to the laws of this world, but according to the universal laws. It is not the laws of the world who dictate the rains, provides you fresh air and the fresh water. It's the nature which provides us, and eventually it is the nature which awards us our karmic reactions. So there are three kinds of actions that we can perform: wrong action, right action, absolute action. What is this wrong, right, and absolute action? Let's take a look at it. For whom attitude result? Wrong actions. Let's begin with the word vikarma. Okay, I'll just explain myself here. Vikarma, probably don't get confused with the sheet here. Vikarma means wrong action. Akarma means right action. And akarma means absolute action. So for whom vikarma is performed? For whom this wrong action is done, which means attachment performed with attachment to I and mine, which particularly leads to fulfillment of sensual desires. Whereas karma, action performed based on knowledge. And akarma, action performed for the absolute truth. Just like Arjuna fighting the battle, he didn't do it for himself, he did it for Krishna. That became an absolute action, akarma. For this, there is no caution of reward or punishment. The ultimate reward is you go back home, back to Godhead, like this. So what is this? What is this concept of karmic bank balance? As long as we have a bank balance within this creation, karmic bank balance, we continue to remain in this world. If somehow we can nullify this karmic bank balance, exhaust it, make it zero, then we are liberated from this world. So the transcendental knowledge nullifies your Karmic bank balance. That's the subject matter. What's that attitude? Wrong actions are against Vedic injunctions, right actions according to scriptures, whereas akarma, the absolute action, there's no question of I and mine. The action is based on how can I serve? How can I serve the absolute? What is the result? When you do an unlawful action, you get punishment. When you do the right action, you get a reward. However, when you do it for the pleasure of the Lord, you get transcendental happiness. So, what it means, what's the difference between right action and absolute action? We're going to talk about it. Just like a soldier standing at the battlefield, when he is instructed to kill, and when he kills an enemy, he receives the gallantry award back at Delhi. However, the same soldiers on his own accord fights with the neighbor and shoots him. The law of the same state punishes him. The action is same, but the difference is for whom it was performed. That's the point about here, about right and the absolute action. Let's move forward. We'll take this again in the future chapter. This is just introduced here. At this point of time, Arjuna reflected on Lord's instruction. And he asked, my dear Krishna, how does a devotee or a transcendental worker performs actions? Which means, how do I perform akarma at all times? Krishna begins to speak and he says from verse number 19 to 24. He says, a devotee acts but not for his self. Therefore, even he performs an action, he doesn't get a reaction because he does it as a service to the Lord. This is a whole subject matter which would be discussed in the future chapter. As I said, the subject matter is only introduced. Just like I'll give an example. A devotee of the Lord, a spiritualist, he eats, an ordinary person eats. But what's the difference between the eating of the ordinary person and a spiritualist? A spiritualist accepts only what has been offered in yajna, which means he only offers food which is prasadam, whereas the ordinary person eats what he likes to eat. You getting the difference? That's the point here. A pretender, although he renounces but has a strong fruitive mentality, thus gets reaction, action, and action. All right. So if I just give you a nutshell about the karma, I will discuss at length later on. There are three kinds of actions: wrong action, right action, absolute action. Wrong action against the injunction of scriptures, which means jumping the signal. Right action is following the scriptures, which means following the state laws. Absolute action, which means which is done for the pleasure of the Lord. And when it is done for the pleasure of the Lord, there we do not get any reaction. When you don't get any reaction, your karmic bank balance gets nullified automatically. And that's the goal. Coming to the last part of the discussion. Arjuna reflected on this instruction of how a person can become a transcendental worker. And then he thought, my dear Lord, for me to become a transcendental worker, for me to perform a karma, I need to have transcendental knowledge. The function of transcendental knowledge is it removes misconceptions and it also nullifies your karmic balance. So my question to you is, how can I attain transcendental knowledge? One is receiving it, that is called as knowledge. And second is realizing it, that is called as wisdom. You have told me, you're giving me a knowledge, but how do I understand it? Are you getting the point? You've got the knowledge, but how do I understand it? Is what Arjuna asks. And here Krishna speaks something really profound. And he gives the means to understand spiritual subject matter. There are so many people who read Bhagavad Gita, but there would be hardly some who understands Bhagavad Gita. There will be many who have memorized the shlokas, but there will be only some who knows the meaning and the purport of Bhagavad Gita or the verses. So how do I realize the question? And Krishna says, spiritual knowledge can only be realized by sacrifice. Material knowledge can be acquired and understood by your caliber. But spiritual knowledge is only understood through good character. Unless you have a character, you cannot understand spiritual knowledge. That is the foremost quality. It does not matter how wealthy, how healthy, or how intelligent you are. Do you have the right conduct or the character? Therefore, it behooves every spiritualist to have the absolute character, to have the right conduct. Because then only you can be said you are a practitioner of the science of Bhagavad Gita. Those who study Bhagavad Gita, if their conduct itself is doubtful, they cannot be called as a student of Bhagavad Gita, which means they don't know Bhagavad Gita. And that's what Krishna says. So, how do we cultivate spiritual knowledge? For that, you have to perform sacrifices. And Krishna, in the series of verses, gives sacrifices assigned or described for different individuals, like for brahmacharis, grahasthas, yogis, other performers, etc. And to gain transcendental knowledge, so the aim of sacrifice to gain transcendental knowledge and develop devotion service. Now, I have kind of skipped it fast because there are many sacrifices. But the question comes, what is that one sacrifice that you and I and all of us can do in our life which will help us realize transcendental knowledge? Otherwise, it becomes difficult. And that's what Arjuna asked. And he said, my dear Lord, you have told me so many sacrifices. How do I know what sacrifice am I supposed to perform? Then Krishna says, all right, Arjuna, don't worry. I'm going to tell you one sacrifice which is the greatest of all. Just do this sacrifice, everything else will follow. Are you ready for that one thing? Just one thing, and everything else follows in our life. And Krishna says, and this is the last part of the chapter 4, process of transcendental knowledge. And Krishna said, Arjuna, the greatest and the most difficult sacrifice is the sacrifice of one's false ego, the sacrifice of one's pride. Just like Arjuna, you did it. Karpanya dosho prahata svabhava prachami tvam dharma samudha chetaha yashreyasya nishchitam bruhitan me shishyaste ham sadi man tvam prapannam. Just like Arjuna acknowledged the weakness, his mistake, and he told Krishna, my dear Krishna, although I have always treated you as a friend, but today I declare you to be my guru. I surrender, Shishyas, te aham tvam prapannam. I become your student. Prapanna means I surrender unto you. And therefore Krishna says, the one sacrifice that we all ought to be doing is the sacrifice of a false pride or false ego. And a very famous shloka. Please repeat after me. Tadvidhi pranipatena परिप्रश्नेन सेवया उपदेक्ष्यन्ति ते ज्ञानम. थोड़ा जोर से बोलो यार. ज्ञानिनस्तत्त्वदर्शिनः तद विधि प्रणिपातेन. Tad refers to what all I have told you about different kind of sacrifices. Vidhi, one must know what is the greatest sacrifice. Tad vidhi pranipatena, which means pariprashnena sevaya. Approach pranipatena, approach. Okay, let me explain reverse. Tattvadarshina means Jnaninas Tattvadarshina. Tattvadarshina means who has seen the truth. Tattvadarshan, clear? Tattvadarshinaha. Upadekshanti te jnanam jnanina tattvadarshina. Tattvadarshina refers to a guru or an individual who have seen the truth. So, Krishna is saying, Tadvidhi pranipatena. Pranipatena, go and take shelter of Tattvadarshinaha, one who knows the truth. Pariprashnena, go to him and inquire. Parishnena, simple, straightforward. Inquire for him. And when you inquire, render seva. Don't only question, but have the attitude of service. Sevaya, Upadeshyanti te jnanam, being pleased with you, your service attitude, he would give you the transcendental knowledge. Jnaninas Tattvadarshina. Why? Because he knows the absolute truth, he has seen the absolute truth. I have a question for all of you. Why Krishna is saying, generally our idea is, okay, ask a question and walk away. But why Krishna has created a system? No, not only ask a question, ask a question, but also render service. Krishna is saying, right? Pariprashnena sevya. Ask a question, sevya, and render service. Any one of you can think about it, why Krishna would say like this. Tadvidi pranipatena pariprashnena sevaya. And pariprashnena, not prashnena. Prashnena means question. Pariprashnena, para apara, which means about spiritual subject matter. Inquiring about how can I make progress. Like Buddha, Gautam, when he saw the dead man, oh, I cannot be like this. How can I rise above this? Is the question, subject matter. Why Pariprashnena is along with Sevaya? Any thoughts? One gets, one becomes humble. Humble in what sense? Because he renders service. Okay, yes. Yeah, the hand is up over there, go ahead. You can stand up and speak loudly. Okay, okay. Remove the ego.
एक्चुअली प्रीवियस लाइक जब पहले के दिन होते थे ऋषि मुनियों के, उस टाइम पे सेवा को बहुत इम्पोर्टेंस दिया जाता था, क्योंकि सेवा आने से जो है अहंकार जो है सेवा करने से वो ख़त्म हो जाता है गुरु की. एंड ऑफ कोर्स सेवा करने से हमारे अंदर पात्रता आती है ताकि
Alright.
हमें वो ज्ञान दे
So
गुरु.
we become qualified
जी.
and our ego. We are humbled. We are humble. Our ego is just right. Wonderful answer. What else? What else? What else? You all are correct. But there's something more to it. Absolutely. Yes.
We are so attached to our egos these days that we identify with the institution we are working in or the.
Again, ego. Correct.
So unless we surrender that thing, the false pride, the pride we take in materialistic things, we won't be able to acquire knowledge, because जब तक अंदर वो भरा हुआ है तब तक किसी और चीज.
All right. Again, the ego. Ego and all right. So, we'll take that now. Thank you. So, Pariprashnena Sevya. It highlights two very important things. First, the boy addressed wonderfully. It creates patrata. How it creates patrata? Patrata means patra. Patrata comes from patra. If you want to hold water, you need a patra. Patrata. If you want to hold knowledge, you have to have the qualification to hold knowledge. So because with service, we become humble. Ye karo, wo karo. So we follow the order, we become humble. And second thing, Lord has created such a system in this world, a system of gratitude. You just cannot take things and walk away. We just had Pitra Paksh. We have Navaratri going on. Every single day has its own significance. And largely goes back to give and take. If I have received something, I am obliged to give back to the society. Only difference was, as he was saying in our Gurukul system, there was no culture of fees first, education later. In fact, the culture was education first, fees optional. If you wish like giving, you give. If you cannot, do not give. Okay, somebody may not have financial ability, but at least you can get a glass of water. That's how seva. Do what you can do and what your capacity. If you do not do seva, then patata would not be developed. So that's the point here. Pariprashnena seva. So those who only ask, but those who cannot give back, those who cannot render service, their patata would never be developed. That's the point here. So, Tattvadarshina, who are the bona fide gurus? That's the point. There are four bona fide paramparas. This is Brahmaji, Lakshmiji, Shivji, and these are four Kumaras. Brahma Sampradaya, Lakshmi Sampradaya, Rudra Sampradaya, and Kumar Sampradaya. And these are the different names of this Sampradaya: Madhava, Ramanuja, Rudra, Nimbarka Sampradaya, like this. Who are the acharyas? Madhavacharya, and then Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. For Lakshmi is Ramanujacharya. For Rudra Sampradaya, Vishnu Swami or Vallabhacharya. And for Kumar Sampradaya is Nimbarka. These are the four bona fide parampara institutions. Just like IIT has to be bona fide by the government of India, these parampara institutions are bona fide and certified by the Lord Himself, because they all start from the Lord like this. These are the names of the commentaries, etc., on this subject matter. And then there is also Mayava Sampradaya, started from Shankaracharya like this. Now coming to the conclusion of the subject matter, what are the glories of transcendental knowledge received from Guru? If in case you get the opportunity to receive the knowledge of Bhagavad Gita from the right source, what will it do to you? What changes are expected? What's going to happen? First, one who receives this knowledge from the right bona fide institution of the person, he will never ever get distracted from the spiritual path. First. Second, he will cross over the ocean of miseries, which means the ananda which we had been always longing for, you begin to experience in your life in the present. It destroys all the sinful reaction, it nullifies our all karmic bank balance. And devotional service, the seed and the fruit of transcendental knowledge, such an individual would definitely take to bhakti. And look, when Srila Prabhupada went around, all these happened. He transformed the hearts and the consciousness of the most corrupted people of that time in terms of the young hippies, addicted to every sinful action. And either you are from American background, which means a Christian, Catholic, Judaistic, were Parsis, or Muslims, whatever you were, all over the world, even if you were communist, socialist, capitalist, whatever had been your ideology, all over the world, whoever had the opportunity to read Prabhupada's Bhagavad Gita, they all got transformed. That's the glories of transcendental knowledge. Well, who can receive and who cannot receive it? One has to be faithful, dedicated for it. And who cannot? Who is ignorant and faithless. What is ignorant and faithless? He may know Bhagavad Gita, but he only picks and chooses what he likes. Okay, I believe in this because I like this. Well, I don't believe in this because I don't like it. One of the first thing, in fact, if you see all over the world, every individual is following Bhagavad Gita. You may know or not know. I'll give you two evidences. What is that? The second chapter was on the karma. Karmana evadi karaste. So that's the first. Karmana evadi karaste. Work is passion. Work is worship. How many of you know about this, have seen about work is passion, work is worship? Raise your hands. Every corporate guy is taught about work is worship, work is passion. So see, even if you don't know Bhagavad Gita, you're still following Bhagavad Gita. I'll give you another instance how everyone in this world follows Bhagavad Gita. Not entirety, but some part of it. Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita last, Sarva Dharman Parityaja. And people really took it seriously. They really gave up on all religion and became atheist. So all the atheistic class is also following Bhagavad Gita, if you look at it from that perspective. So what is a symptom of success? Nishkama Bhakti. Is free from all doubts, is free from all hankerings, and now he is firmly situated in his relationship with the Absolute Truth. To conclude, Krishna says, Arjuna, armed with the knowledge of yoga, get up and fight. Well, Arjuna did not get up. Well, Arjuna got up but did not fight. Therefore, our discussion will continue in the 5th chapter. Because if he would have started to fight, Bhagavad Gita would only had 4 chapters. Which means Krishna said, Arjuna, get up and fight. Arjuna did got up. But he still said, I still have some doubts. Can you please clarify? And that's how the 5th chapter begins. Where Arjuna began to speak again to Krishna and said, my dear sir, I still have some doubts. Krishna said, all right, bad job. Class jari rahegi. And the class continued. So concluding the 4th chapter, the acronym PAST, where we saw the history and the origin of Bhagavad Gita. And the question was, if in case Krishna spoke to Vivaswan son God 20 lakh years ago. Oh, so how come Krishna is standing in front of Arjuna? How did Krishna know his past life? Then Krishna talks about himself. Well, no, that's not the case. I remember everything because I appear in the Satchit Ananda form. And we saw the differences between the Lord and the living entities. Why does Krishna appears? Then we saw those two famous verses, Yada Yada Hi Dharmasya. So Krishna, when does he appear? When there is a rise in religion, the decline in religion. And why he appears? To destroy the demons and to protect the devotees and establish dharma. What is the benefit? What is the result of knowing about Krishna? Janma karma chame divyam evam yuveti tattva. The one who knows the truth about the absolute, then he goes back to home, back to Godhead. I spoke about anti-material world and material world, 1954, Physics Nobel Prize. Now, after understanding the position of Krishna, was about applying transcendental knowledge. Once you have transcendental knowledge, first advantage, all misconceptions are destroyed. We discussed 3 misconceptions. Anyone remembers what was the first misconception? All paths lead to same goal. Answer is no. Second misconception? All gods are same. Answer is no. The third misconception? The caste system is exploitative. Answer is no. The system is not exploitative. The one who are running the system are exploitative. That was the second part. And then the third part was not only the transcendental knowledge removes all the misconceptions, transcendental knowledge also nullifies your karmic bank balance. The karma are 3 types. Wrong action, vikarma. Right action, karma. Absolute action, akarma. Wrong action, against the laws. Right action, according to the laws. Absolute action, for the pleasure of the Lord. So if you perform the action for the pleasure of the Lord, the third action, akarma, then we do not get any reaction. That's how we destroy all our karmic reactions. And the fourth, where Arjuna asked, my dear Lord, I have received transcendental knowledge, but how do I understand transcendental knowledge? And Krishna said, the subject matter of spiritual science is not a matter of caliber, but of character. How do you develop character? Through sacrifice. And Krishna speaks about different sacrifices, and Arjuna got confused. He said, too many sacrifices. How do I know what sacrifice to perform what time? Krishna said, all right, let me tell you one sacrifice which all of us can do at all times. What is that? Tadvidhi pranipatena paripashnaya sevya updekshanti te jnanam jnanina sattva darshana. The sacrifice of your ego, the sacrifice of your false pride. Take shelter of a tattva darshana. Inquire, pariprashnaya, about the spiritual subject matters. Render service unto him. You will understand. Arjuna, just like you surrendered unto me, took shelter of me, like that everyone should take shelter of Tattva Darshana. What is the result of one who does that? He will never fall down from this path. He will get freedom from all the miseries. He will attain love of Godhead, Ananda, like this. And I said, Srila Prabhupada's hard work paid off when people all over the world accepted Krishna consciousness, understood the message of Bhagavad Gita, followed it regardless of the caste, color, creed, background, and religious affiliations that they had. And finally, the point was, who can, who cannot, you have to be faithful. Those who are faithless and doubtful, who pick and choose, will fail to understand. And the conclusion, Krishna said, Arjuna, if you have understood, get up and fight. Which means if you have understood, get up and start performing akarma. Which means all your actions now should be for the pleasure of Krishna. Looking at your faces, I'm definitely sure you definitely need a 5th chapter. You have many doubts in your mind. So you should be happy that Arjuna also had a doubt. So that something more is there. So in the 5th chapter, the doubts which are lingering in your mind would be addressed further. Just Arjuna had a doubt, and the 5th chapter begins with Arjuna's questions. Prabhu, abhi bhi samajh nahi aaya? And Krishna said, Bolo, tumhara prashna kya hai? We'll see that next time. Well, this we conclude here. However, I have some questions for you. Last time you guys asked too many questions. So this time I thought I'll ask you a question, okay? All right. How would you answer the following? Are you ready? Okay, the first question. A child asks, there are so many self-appointed teachers of Bhagavad Gita. How do I know who is the most authorized proponent, which means teacher, of the teachings of Lord Krishna? इतने सारे लोग बोलते हैं हमें भगवद गीता आती है. How do I know who is the authorized, who is a genuine practitioner, or who is a tattvadarshina? Who knows this? Yes, mother. Can we have a mic there? We can have. Quick. One can be in the middle. Yes, go ahead.
One who is associated with ISKCON.
Oh, okay, that's okay. Okay. Yeah, I mean, thank you for that. I appreciate that. Yeah, all right. So the answer was, okay, let's hear. Somebody else. No, that's okay, all of you. Yes, okay, no, you have been coming around. Okay, give it to this. ये तो अपना घर का ही खेती है. दो कोई बात नहीं. All right, we'll hear from her. Yes.
मतलब जो नॉलेज गुरु परंपरा के अनुसार
परंपरा से आई है, and there are 4 parampara. So ISKCON is a bona fide parampara because we come in Brahma Madhava Gaudiya parampara. Like this, there are other spiritual forums also where you can get this knowledge. So Brahma Madhava Gaudiya parampara, then there is Sri Samprada, then there is Rudra Samprada, and then there is Kumar Samprada. Thank you. That's us. All right, sit down. एक और प्रश्न है. जो आंसर देंगे प्रसादम कंफर्म्ड, बाकी सब वेटिंग में. All right. How would you answer this question? A friend asked to another friend, I am unable to understand and appreciate Bhagavad Gita as all of you. What am I lacking? Which means I am also reading Bhagavad Gita, you are also reading Bhagavad Gita. But why do I fail to understand Bhagavad Gita? All right, a young man over here, the mic apparently coming for the first time. Yes, go ahead.
I'm first time. So the answer is ones who don't understand the Bhagavad Gita is who don't surrender to it.
One who's not surrendering, okay. What else? Over here? Lack of faith. Yes, please raise your hand on the mic over here. I repeat the question again. I'm unable to understand as all of you. Although you are reading Bhagavad Gita, I am reading Bhagavad Gita, but you seem to have better appreciation of Bhagavad Gita than I. Character. Okay, what else? Over there? Illusion of predefined mindset. Fantastic. Go ahead, behind.
Consider yourself as a Arjun.
Considering yourself. All right, what else? सबका गलत जवाब है. डिनर कैंसिल. देखो जो गलत आंसर दे रहे. Yes, go ahead.
That person should read the Bhagavad Gita as actually like it is, the way it is
Read Bhagavad
written.
Gita as it is.
Yes.
The person behind. He is not realizing. Yes. And I'm feeling that you are not realizing what is the answer. Right. Good attempt.
Not following the proper guru.
Not falling. Actually, that's what the answer is. How many of you have read Bhagavad Gita before? A part of it, little bit of it. Please raise your hand. Okay, somewhat you have read. This question to those who have been coming for a while. Would you say or would you agree your understanding is far better today when I'm listening, hearing from the right sources than just by reading it? Yes or no? So the answer here is, by reading alone you will not understand. First you have to hear it. Did Arjuna read Bhagavad Gita or Arjuna heard Bhagavad Gita? The process of acquiring knowledge is through hearing, never by reading. First hear, then read. The mistakes that we made is, we think I have a Bhagavad Gita, I am my own guru, I will read it and I will understand it. So, Haribol, pack prasadam, take it back. Sabne galat jawab diya. All right, so we conclude over here. Any questions from the audience here? Yes, the hands up over there. And when we catch up next week, the next chapter, chapter 5, finding peace, inner peace. Yes, sir.
So the question that I had is that अगर हम भगवद गीता का 4th chapter पढ़ते तो basically we go to immaterial world after we die.
Anti-material, spiritual world.
Anti-material world. So basically मतलब population तो बढ़ते जाता है तो मतलब जो particular spirit anti-material world में जा रहा है उसको replace करने के लिए नया spirit का birth होता है कि how it works?
Oh, you're worried about the population, huh? I'm worried about you. I guess you should take care of you yourself first. Being too much worried about the things which are beyond your control, isn't it? But nonetheless, you're trying to ask a question. अगर सभी वहाँ चले गए, तो धरती पे तो अकाल पड़ जाएगा. Is it? Don't worry, we'll ensure. Anything else? Yeah, we have a question up here, friends.
हरे कृष्ण। जैसे कि हमने देखा कि जो भगवान ने जो नॉलेज है जो है ईश्वरु तक हमें मिला है, तो उसके भी आगे जिस तरीके से अर्जुन ने भी उसे सुना था और जैसे संजय ने भी सुना था, तो उन्होंने भी ये नॉलेज किसी को मतलब दिया है या?
Actually, because they were Kshatriyas, knowledge generally traditionally was passed on from Brahmanas to students because they would run, Gurukul. So Krishna also spoke to Arjuna. The same thing was documented by Vyasadeva. And that Vyasadeva taught his son Sukdev Goswami. That Sukdev Goswami taught Sutta Goswami. That Sutta Goswami taught another. Like that, the parampara had continued. There is no parampara of lineage of Bhagavad Gita coming from Arjuna because they are Kshatriya. Everyone had their predefined occupation. So, Brahminical class were the one who would teach. Study would be done by Brahmanas, Kshatriya, Vaishya, but who would teach? The Brahmanas. So the parampara continued from Vyasadeva. It is Vyasadeva who compiled everything. So from him, Vyasadeva to his son Sukdev, Sukdev Goswami, Sutta Goswami, and like this it continues like that. All right?
मेरा क्वेश्चन ये है कि लास्ट में जैसे हमने बोला कि जो परंपरागत ज्ञान है वैसे ट्रांसफ़र होना चाहिए, बट बीइंग अ ह्यूमन बीइंग हम कुछ ना कुछ तो उसमें ऐड करते जाते हैं. मतलब आपसे मैंने सुना, मैं किसी को सुना रहा हूँ, बट मैं मेरी फिलोसॉफी उसमें ऐड करके बता रहा हूँ, तो वो अल्टीमेट नहीं हुआ जो भगवद गीता बता रही है. जैसे भगवद गीता मैंने मनोगति पढ़ा अभी तक, उसमें ये कहा गया है कि तुम भगवद गीता को फॉलो करो जो अल्टीमेट है, उसमें सब कुछ है. बट अगर पर्सन टू पर्सन जाए तो उसमें अपना कुछ ऐड करके जो अपने डाउट्स है वो ऐड करके फिर ट्रांसफ़र होता है. तो ये अगर चलता रहा तो एट द एंड जो यूज़र होगा, जो भी मनुष्य होगा, उस तक तो जो मेन मैसेज है
पहुंचेगा ही नहीं.
वो तक पहुंचेगा ही नहीं.
So that's how who transmits the message of Bhagavad Gita has to be qualified. Not that anyone who reads Bhagavad Gita becomes the teacher of Bhagavad Gita. So your point is, why did Prabhupada wrote Bhagavad Gita as it is? Which means there has been no addition and no subtraction. And the result proves the quality. Because the result was transformation, whoever heard it. Which means the message was as it is. So therefore the parampara system, as I said, that the guru identifies the student who can now represent him and carry forward the legacy. Not that everyone becomes. So at your stature, I would say don't worry about it. It's been taken care. I would say you should take care of how you can transform your life by taking it seriously. There are some books available at the back, small books. I would request all of you who have come for the first time, at least pick a small book if you're a little terrified from the big books. Yes?
Yeah, I wanted to know more about akarma and karma. Like,
Yes.
should I ask right now or maybe after
We
7
can
chapters?
raise the question now. Go ahead.
Like in our day-to-day world, we do lot of things. We do is for karma. Is like okay. Every time we don't really keep a Krishna consciousness and do. To be honest.
How do I make my whole day and all activities at akarma? To be precisely?
Yeah, how do
Absolutely.
we differentiate and if we are doing karma like normal our day-to-day worldly activities, should we feel guilty about that?
No, you don't have to feel guilty about that. That's not the point. The idea is actions not going to change. The consciousness behind those actions going to change. Karma is for I. Akarma is for the Lord. So when we honor prasadam, there is a whole system given for that. The food, we cannot live without food. So we just don't eat food what I want to eat. We eat food that Krishna can honor. Patram pushpam phalam toyam yome bhaktya prachati. Therefore the transcendentalists or spiritualists do not eat meat. They don't even eat onion, garlic and mushrooms, things like that. They eat which can be offered to the Lord. They offer it to the Lord and then honor it as prasadam. Your eating is qualified, your eating is akarma. Similarly, action which are performed, rather than just utilizing the results of action for yourself, we take a part of the result of our actions and dedicate back in the service of the Lord, then your actions, that your professional life becomes akarma. Similarly, everything that you do in your life, how can I connect to the Lord? And the best way is to begin it at mechanical level, where whatever result is it of that action, try to utilize in the service of the Lord. Till the time your consciousness gets transformed, where you see everything as a service to the Lord. And it is not only about doing things, there is a spiritual practice. And spiritual practice begins with mantra meditation. We got to have this practice in our life where every day we chant Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. This chanting of the holy names of the Lord, Cheto Darpana Marchanam, purifies our consciousness and transforms us from I consciousness to we consciousness, where it is not only about me, it is about Lord and me. How can I do something for the Lord? Before I do something for me, how can I serve you? It's just a natural phenomenon. It happens if we just take to this process of chanting. And for that, we have to start with it. So, all right, make it as the last question over there behind.
Hare Krishna Guruji. You told us that work is worship. Like we are living in this material world, and so how for working, we are working for a company. So how working for a company becomes worship? And if work is a worship,
2
then
weeks prior, I spoke on the topic.
okay.
I dedicatedly spoke on the topic. I believe you started coming last week, right?
Yes.
So you can get a recording of that session.
Okay.
How to make your work as a worship. I spoke almost 1.5 hours for that. As a whole seminar on that, go through that seminar. There are step 1, 2, 3, 4.
Yes.
If you just follow that, it becomes worship.
Okay.
All right?
Thank you.
Hare Krishna. With that, we conclude here. Thank you all. Can I have the book? So those of you who have been coming around, who have been connected, I would like to encourage all of you to read this book, Beginner's Guide actually. So there is this book called as Beginner's Guide to Krishna Consciousness. Just like you asked the question, how to make karma into a karma, it gives you the steps. Step 1, 2, 3, 4. Work as worship, it gives you that. So I would request all of you, those who have been around, coming around, those who are students of this forum, please pick a copy from the book table for yourself. Hare Krishna.